to the channel. My name is Keith. So do you want to memorize all the notes on the fretboard, know how to play every single major and minor chord, and sound like Jimi Hendrix, at least a little more like Jimi Hendrix in the process? Well, you come to the right place, so stick around, we'll get right to it, and I'll show you exactly how we can do that. So the how. The how is the biggest question here. How are we going to figure out all the notes on the fretboard? It seems very daunting. I mean, look at all these letters. But there is a way that we could kind of distill things down and help guide us along to learning every note on the fretboard, and I'll show you exactly how. And we're going to be using the circle of fifths as kind of a tool. So don't be scared. The circle of fifths may look scary, may not make sense, and I promise you we're not going to delve too deep into it. We're going to use that outer ring on the circle of fifths and go counterclockwise to kind of run through the exercise. But I do want to give you a brief overview of what it means real quick. So if you look on the top of the circle of fifths here for the C example, because that's where we're going to be starting everything off here, to the left of the C, you'll see an F. That is the fourth of the C. So if you count it out, C, D, E, F. F is the 4, right? And then to the right of the C is the G. The G is the 5th, hence the term circle of fifths, because if you pick a note on that circle, the next note to the right of it will be the 5th, and the note before would be the 4th. The reason that's important is because 1-4-5 is the basis of blues and early rock. So a lot of songs are written in 1-4-5. So if you ever run out of ideas on chord progressions or things like that, break out the circle of fifths, pick out a 1-4-5 there, and you'll be able to rock and roll and get on your way. Now that we have the circle of fifths kind of out of the way, we're going to go over how we're going to start to memorize a fretboard. So again, we have all these notes on the fretboard. It seems impossible, and a lot of people, know every single note. They could say, hey, play a C sharp, and they could point to the fretboard and pick out every C sharp on there. We don't need to know all that. For all intents and purposes, however you want to say it, you only need to know where to find it in a few different places, but we're going to get started here. And we take all those notes on the fretboard, and we're only going to be concentrating on the notes that are on the E and the A string, but to make things even easier, we're going to just look at the natural notes, the E, or let's just say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, no flats, no sharps, just the natural notes. How do we get there? So I have a chart that I'm throwing up right now that shows just the natural notes for the E and the A string. Now those do correspond, for the most part, to the dots that are on the fretboard. Alright, so now that we know the natural notes are what we're going to be working with on the E and the A string, let's just roll through the natural notes on each of those strings. Again, we're going to be using the fret markers as kind of our guides. The dots are already there, why not use them? They're there for a reason. So open E, and then the first fret is an F, and then the third fret is a G, and then 5th A, then a B on the 7th fret, and then here's where it gets a little tricky. Between the B and the C is only 1 fret, so this is a B on the 7th fret, and then a C on the 8th fret, and then you go up 2 frets, and that's a D, and then you're right back around to the E. Now, before we move on to the A string, I'm going to throw up a link to the major scale. That's why the B and the C are always together, 1 fret apart, and the E and the F, 1 fret apart. Everything else, 2 frets apart. We're going to learn that right now with the A string. So we have an open A, 2nd fret's a B, and then remember what I said, 1 fret between the B and the C, so the C is going to be right here on the 3rd fret. Easy way to remember that is if you do the C chord, this is your C, because this is the root of that C. And it's also here too, right? So you have a B and then the C. So here's our C, then a D. We know that if we play a D up here in the A shape, that's our D. E, here's a tricky one, F, then a G, then right circling back around on the 12th fret, that's our A again. Now, it's important you memorize those. So I took all those notes, just cut them all out, and we're just stuck with the natural notes on the fretboard. You memorize that, you're going to be really good to go, and here's why. Let's say somebody says play an E flat. Okay, where's an E flat? Are you just, okay, I have an E string here, but there's no fret down here. You don't want to be stuck there, right? But what we do know is that there's an E right here on the 7th fret of that A string. And if you bring that back 1 fret, that's an E flat. E, E flat. So let's look at a C sharp, right? A C sharp, here's our C. And then you move it up 1, that's a C sharp. Could also be called a D flat, but we won't delve too deep into that. We'll just call it a C sharp right now. C, C sharp. So that is the key to understanding where all those in-between notes are. You find the natural note, and then you either flatten it by 1 fret or sharpen it by 1 fret. But be mindful of between the B and the C and the E and the F, because if you go up 1 fret from the B to the C, it's going to be exactly that. It's not going to be a B sharp, and it's not going to be an E sharp or anything. It's going to be a C or an F. So that is kind of the deal that we got going on there. All right, so next is the lick. We want to be able to practice this little thing. We want to take all these notes and practice, and we want to also make it fun. So how do we make it fun? We're going to take a little double stop Jimi Hendrix type of deal. So we're going to start here on the C. That sounds very Jimmy-esque because we have double stops there. And I'll go ahead and post another video, a short that I did recently on exactly that, the double stops. I have a couple of them actually. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out the tabs for that. Since we're starting on a C, this is for the C section of this. And it can be applied to everything else, because whether I play this lick in the C or D, you know, it doesn't matter. Same kind of finger pattern that we're going on for each and every one of these. So it starts off right here with the C on the A string, the 3rd fret of the A string. And then we're going to go up from the 5th fret and slide to the 7th. And this is our kind of major scale. It's a diagonal pentatonic major scale. So it's slide up to the 7th, and then we're going to bar the D and the G strings on the 5th fret. That's our double stop. Then hammer on to the 7th fret of that D string. Lift up. And then we'll do this little 7th fret of the A string, 5th fret, then back to the 7th. I'm going to do it slowly and then quickly. That's the lick. Now, here's the fun part. We're going to go ring around the rosy, starting with the C and going counterclockwise on all the letters. So I'm going to zoom back down to the fretboard, leave the circle of fifths up there, and I'm going to call out all the letters as I play that same lick. C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, F sharp, B, E, A, D, G, and then back to the C. So basically I played every single note that I could possibly want here. And that's the whole beauty of this whole thing. If you are able to kind of pinpoint, and I know it might be slow going at the beginning because you're going to have to think where the markers are, but it'll get better, I promise, because when I'm doing this whole exercise, I am doing exactly what you think. I'm looking at, let's say, an E flat, right? I'm looking at the fretboard, and the first thing I'm thinking is, where's the E? So the E that I want to do right here, because if we look at an E flat, we have the open E string, but there's no fret behind the nut here, so I can't do that. So I'm going to move up to this E that's on the A string. I know that because I memorized, hey, this is an A, B, C, D, E. And then if I bring it back one fret, that's an E flat. So that way I could start the pattern from there. That's an E flat pattern right there. Okay, so now that we have that down, we could take that circle of fifths, and I promised that I wouldn't delve too deep into it, but this is fun, right? So if we have the C and a G, that's exactly what I did for the intro here. C, G, F, right? So the G would be the 5, and the C would be the 4. So here's our C, and here's our G, and here's our F. So I'm going to go from the C to the F to the C, then to the G, F, C, right? So that is C, G, F. You look at the circle of fifths, it's G, F, then back to the C. So you could take these little patterns and pick any one of them and go between the 1, 4, and 5, and it's going to sound good just by the nature of the way this whole thing works, which is pretty cool. All right, now to go full circle here, no pun intended, I wanted to talk about the chords. So when we're talking about chords, let's say somebody did want to throw, hey, let's play an E flat. How are we going to know how to play an E flat? The easy thing here is if you're doing anything on the A string, in this exercise, for example, we identify that root note. Let's say the E is right here on the 7th fret. We back up, that's an E flat. So if I take that A shape, that is our E flat chord. Here's our E, here's our E flat. And if you, the same rule, if I want to turn this from an E to an E minor, we could do the same thing here. E flat, E flat minor. So don't let anybody tell you you don't know how to play an E flat minor is what I'm trying to get at here. So let's do one more quick one. So we have a C chord, right? But we're playing it up here instead. Let's say somebody says play a C minor. Well, how many people know how to play a C minor in open position? Not that many people, I bet, do right off the bat. And if you're having trouble with that, you could just take the C bar chord and then turn that into a minor. There's your C minor bar chord. Let's look at one more here. Let's look at a D, D minor, E, E minor, F, F minor. So the same thing does apply to the E, right? So we have an A. All right, yeah, here's a good example. Let's say a B flat, right? That's a very popular, I think, chord. So here's our, how do I know where the B flat is? So I know there's an A here and a B here. I take that B, lower it back by 1 fret. That's our B flat. Lift up that middle finger. That's a B flat minor chord. So you learn this exercise, you have all those chords right there in your pocket at your disposal, and nobody could tell you that you can't play any of these major or minor chords because you can, and it's that simple and it's that easy. So that is what makes this whole thing so fun. I really, really, really hope you take that into account here and do this exercise, because if you do it as a warm-up, a little bit here and there, you're going to learn all those natural notes on the E and the A strings, and eventually the gaps, the sharps and the minors, or the sharps and the flats will fill themselves in, and you'll just know everything right off the bat, I promise. So that's all I have for you today. I really hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that it was helpful more than anything. And most importantly, I hope that it sparked something in you to kind of learn it and kind of create new songs and new chord progressions and not feel so confused as to where everything lies on the fretboard, because once you distill things down and understand why it's there and how to simplify these things and memorizing all that, it's just going to open up new doors and new opportunities for you, and you'll be able to just make music however you want to. So if you like what you saw here, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.